Hi guys, and welcome to Thankful Thursdays again with myself, Kel, and also Rachel. So this week what the channel is doing, as you've probably already noticed, is each day we're looking at a different type of lesser known eating disorder. And the eating disorder that Rachel and I are looking at is orthorexia. So orthorexia basically is an eating disorder that's characterised by sort of a preoccupation and obsession, if you like, with healthy eating, to the point that you kind of have good foods and bad foods, and you might limit things in your diet. You might remove fat from your diet, or sugar, or salt, or meat, or all of the above, and not meat in a vegetarian type way at all, but sort of in a way that you think that's kind of a bad food and you want to be absolutely completely healthy. So the name orthorexia has actually only been around since 1997, and it isn't actually an eating disorder you can actually be properly diagnosed with, in the sense that it isn't in the diagnostic manual that psychiatrists use when diagnosing people. But as you all know, I'm not really for diagnoses anyway. I don't need to label an eating disorder. An eating disorder is an eating disorder, and whatever the behaviours, to me it kind of suggests the same kind of internal struggle. But somebody that suffers from orthorexia would probably generally be underweight, maybe not as much as an anorexic, in that they are probably, hopefully, maybe eating a little bit more than an anorexic, but because they're restricting their diet so much, they're probably not going to be getting enough calories, and definitely not going to be getting all the nutrients that you need for your body and your brain to be healthy. And this might mean that you become underweight, even emaciated, or that you have symptoms of, nutritional deficiencies like anemia and a whole host of others. I imagine the most significant symptoms are probably the brain type symptoms, in that you're obsessive about what you eat, and it creates a lot of anxiety in the same way as it does with any other eating disorder. And apparently, from some information that I found on a website of a British newspaper, this is an eating disorder that equally affects men and women, and most people that suffer with it are over 30. So that's kind of an unusual group for people with eating disorders. Most people with eating disorders are younger and female, and that's by no means everybody, definitely not, but generally. So it's interesting that this orthorexia is sort of predominantly amongst people 30 and over, and also that men equally are diagnosed with it. That's quite interesting, because it's, with any other disorder, it's sort of hugely female orientated, other than something like exercise addiction, which I imagine is closer to equal, if maybe not more male. So I think I would mention that it's kind of linked to sort of obsessive compulsive behaviours, so it can also be said to sort of be a branch of obsessive compulsive disorder, in the kind of your obsession and your compulsion is your preoccupation with healthy eating and limiting your food, only eating certain foods. I think I possibly could have been diagnosed with this if the diagnosis did exist when I was recovering from anorexia, because when I was recovering I did get quite preoccupied with eating healthy, and I didn't want to include things like fats in my diet and sugar, and I think that that's quite usual from what I've heard from quite a lot of people who have recovered from anorexia. And I think that kind of is because this preoccupation feeds into sort of the perfectionist nature that people with anorexia often have, and also you're still very heavily controlling your food even though you are eating, which that was more what it was about for me. When I was starting to eat, I really was quite scared of it, and having quite a lot of control was helpful to me in the short term. But obviously if I'd kept up those behaviours, then I would have remained ill and I wouldn't be as well as I am today. What helped me really when I was recovering from anorexia, and I sort of went through this phase of an obsession with healthy eating was just really education, and I saw a dietitian, and that was really helpful for sort of this element of my eating disorder, in that I could learn why I needed specific things in my diet. And I remember being quite shocked when I first got sort of a full meal plan that included all types of, you know, normal foods that I really thought were unhealthy and I wouldn't ever eat again, even, you know, once I became recovered from anorexia. I suppose that up until recently, or perhaps it's not a term that's used by psychiatrists and psychologists yet, that most people that fall into this bracket are probably diagnosed with EDNOS, or eating disorders not otherwise specified. And because of that, I can imagine that there is quite a lot of people you know, that sort of fall into that category with a huge variety of disorders into the eating disorders not otherwise specified bracket. And I suppose it's really down to your perception of your disorder as to whether you identify yourself as having orthorexia or not. But as I keep referring back to in this video and in plenty of videos before, to me this label really isn't that important. And if this is something you are struggling with, then just because it's not, you know, sort of a usual diagnosis, then don't use that as a reason not to seek treatment. I know when I sought treatment, when I wasn't originally, you know, really sick, I avoided seeking treatment because I didn't sort of fit into a diagnostic criteria, because I wasn't yet an anorexic weight, and I kind of thought that that made me a fraud. And I can imagine that people that suffer with sort of these lesser known eating disorders that don't actually have, you know, a diagnostic criteria as such yet, that's a feeling that you probably experience quite a lot, you know, that you're not typical, so that you shouldn't access the treatment, but you absolutely should if you're struggling with this. And it's so important to be physically well, and that does just help in so many areas of your life. If you're experiencing depression or anything like that, increased levels of anxiety, all of that becomes worse when you're not nourishing your body properly. So I think that's just about everything I have to say today, and I hope this has been of some use, and hopefully Rachel's got some other information as well, and I'll see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.